Give us your name
My name's Ron Lauder.
and your position at Habitat.
I'm the president and CEO of Habitat for Humanity in Henderson County.
Well, as we're approaching these topics, I guess the first one we're going to start off with is why you view leadership as being different from management.
Why do I view them different? Well, I'll give you an example, or I'll give you a definition that I once heard that I think was really impactful to me. I read this definition of the difference being that management's job is to try to figure out how to crawl up the rungs of the corporate ladder. Leadership's job is to try to figure out which wall to lean the ladder against. And I thought that was just about as succinct a summary of the difference between the two as I could come up with.
That's good. Speak a little bit, if you will, to the traits of a leader and how you see those in your position, in your sector of the economy.
Yeah, traits of a leader. There's a lot of different ways you can approach that, and a lot of people come up with a whole long list of things that make a leader or don't make a leader. But the one thing that I think distinguishes a leader from, or someone who has the potential for becoming a leader, from those who are the folks that day to day get the job done, is an unending desire for information. I am an inveterate reader. I read everything that will sit still long enough for me to focus on it. And I read, it doesn't make any difference if it applies to what I do or not, because I pick up information all over the place. And if you're creative enough, you can take that information and apply it to what you're trying to do and where your organization is, where you're trying to take your organization. You don't have to stay within your little confines of information to be a good leader. Actually, I think you're a better leader when you get outside of those confines and you take the learnings from other disciplines and apply them to your own. And I think that you can grow better, I think you can grow faster, and I think you can be far more effective as an organization when you do that.
The importance of vision and innovation. How do you see that as a leader in the nonprofit or the civic organization that you're part of?
Well, I think it's important whether you're a not-for-profit or a for-profit. If you are doing the same thing day in and day out, you're not really growing. You're not expanding your reach. You're not, in our case, impacting more lives than you were last year or the year before. Without vision, without seeing where this organization can go, and dreaming about what is possible, you are going to be the same thing today as you were yesterday, and that is really not being a major impact player in whatever your service area happens to be. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to be visionary to a degree, within reason. I mean, you can come up with a vision that is absolutely ridiculous, but within the confines of the organization's mission, I think you have to be as visionary as you possibly can be if you're really going to be an impact player in your community. I think the same is true with the for-profit world, for that matter. You really need to be able to see what could we be doing to our constituency, to our customers, what have you, that we aren't doing, that we're capable of doing, and then find ways to do that appropriately. Mm-hmm. So I think vision is really at the core of growth.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the role and importance of decision-making as the leader of an organization.
You know, the best example that I ever got on the decision-making came from a guy by the name of Carl Gerstacker. Carl was the chairman of the board of Dow Chemical back between 1960 and I think 1976. It was a period of great profitability for Dow Chemical. And back in the 80s, I was privileged to be the executive director of the Michigan State University Foundation. And Carl had a love for that university, and the university and Dow Chemical had a very solid partnership. And Carl, by then he was retired. I was a young 32 Turk trying to figure out how to be a leader for the foundation. And he had taken me under his wing. He liked me for whatever reason. And so we were sitting one day having coffee, and I very very honestly, very meaningfully, I said, Carl, you were very successful. Tell me, what do you think do you attribute your success to? And he said, Ron, one thing. He said, right or wrong, I'm always sure. And what he meant by that was you can work like the Dickens to get all the information you need to make a perfect decision. And if you do that, you'll never make a decision, because you'll never get all the information you need to make the perfect decision. What he said was, I get enough information to make a well-reasoned decision, and then we act. And that way, we're at least moving forward. But I'm always open to finding out if there's new information, or if some of the information I had was wrong, and making adjustments along the way. The importance is I'm moving forward, and we're advancing the organization as a result. So he never waited. He acted. And I think that that's the best part of decision making, is being willing to make that decision and being willing to admit that part of that was wrong, and so I'm going to adjust it, but we're going to keep moving forward.
That's great. I love it. How about planning, the importance of planning? How have you seen that through your career as a leader in your work efforts?
Well, planning is, to me, is really knowing where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. I mean, to start with a plan, you have to know what your end game is. And then you have to have some kind of a design to get there. I kind of hearken it to taking a road trip. Pretend you're as old as me right now, and you still use maps, and you don't have a smartphone. And you decide you're going to go to Denver, Colorado. Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pull out a map and try to figure out what that pathway is going to be. So you've got an end game with Denver. You now have a roadmap to get there. But halfway down the road, you find out that a bridge is out, or there's construction for the next 30 miles, and you don't want to be involved in it. So you stop, you pull out the map, you try to figure out a way to get around that, but you're still heading for Denver. You're just taking a different path. To me, planning really sets you up to say, here's where I want to be. Here's how I think I'm going to get there. But you have to be flexible enough to say, that turned out not to be the right thing. Let's regroup, and let's figure it out, and still going. But you know where you're going to go. You know what didn't work. You're not sure what will work, but you're willing to try those things. And if without planning, you aren't going to be able to get to Denver. You just aren't. You'll get somewhere, but you won't necessarily get to Denver. So I think that's what planning is about, is it creates the storyline that allows you to get to where you want to be. But it also creates a context for the flexibility to design and redesign as necessary.
Okay, good, thank you. Talk a little bit about time management, priorities, and being an effective executive, executing effectively.
When you're an executive, when you're the leader of an organization, everything comes your way. It's really easy to get sidetracked by somebody else's problem or somebody else's priority. And what I've found is I have to really think about, what do I want to accomplish for that day or for that week? And I have to prioritize them so that I can stay focused on the things that are going to have the greatest impact on the organization. And what I do is, it's fairly mechanical, actually. But I say, well, these are the things that I must do. These are the things that I should do. And these are the things that I could do. But the must-dos are the most important, so I give those the highest priority. And I don't get to the should-dos or the must-dos until I've gotten them the highest priorities done. Check those off, I go to the next in the list, and so on. If I haven't accomplished it when I wanted to, I don't forget it. I forwarded it on to some other part of my week or my month, whatever it happens to be. But I make sure that I am dealing with the list that I've created that I know is what's really going to work. That way, when you come into my office with your problem, I don't spend much time on it because I have my own issues.
Okay. Talk a little bit about personnel development and succession planning for an organization, the importance of it.
Okay, personnel development and succession planning, I think, are really important. Personnel development, for one reason, is important because we know as leaders that the most expensive part of running a business is recruiting and training new people. And if you don't provide people with an opportunity to grow in place, to be able to advance within their careers in your organization, they'll find it outside. And now you've got to replace them and train the next one. It's better to help develop them professionally, to help grow them in your organization so that you can keep that talent and take advantage of all the learnings that they've had under your tutelage. Succession planning is a part of that. I think that every healthy organization has a good succession plan in place, whether it's for the chief executive officer or the chief leadership within the organization. Things happen that we don't expect, that we really need to know what to do. I've seen too many organizations where the CEO announced that they were going to leave, and the board just goes, now what do we do? What should we do? They don't have a plan in place. They don't know what to do. You could have a situation that is very short term, a health issue that takes that person out of the picture for a while. It could be a longer term issue. It could be a planned issue, a retirement, or it could be just like that. Walk outside, get hit by a bus, no more CEO. So if you don't know what to do as a board, if you don't know what to do as an organization in those various kinds of scenarios, then you will lose an awful lot of time and do a lot of foolish things. If you have a succession plan in place, you know exactly what to do, who's responsible for doing it, what steps to take, and you can get to fixing the problems significantly faster and with a higher quality outcome as a result.
And from your experience, would you say most organizations do or do not have that plan?
Most of them do not.
Do not have.
Yeah, that's my experience. They talk a good game, but they don't have a formal written plan that everybody knows what it is and where it is.
Okay. I want to circle back to the difference between leaders and managers for a minute. Can you talk a little bit about maybe examples of where you've seen people that might have good leadership qualities but not be necessarily good managers, or vice versa?
Well, I don't know about all leaders. I know that in my case, I'm much better working at 30,000 feet, looking at the total landscape and figuring out what does that mean to our organization and what are the opportunities that we have, what are the challenges that are coming down the road, and trying to figure out the things that we need to be doing to either address the challenges or to take advantage of the opportunities. Management tends to be pretty well focused on their department or their particular area of responsibility, and they don't think about the rest of it, or they don't think often about how what they do influences the other aspects of the organization. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really where the difference is. Management doesn't have blinders on, or does have blinders on oftentimes, whereas leadership cannot afford to have blinders on. They have to be able to see the much bigger picture. And when leaders are very tunnel visioned, I think that really impacts on the ability of the organization to be impactful and to grow.
Mm-hmm. Viability.
Yeah.
As you think about just the topic of leadership, and just as a kind of a concluding thought, is there anything in particular you'd like to add to contribute for this video that talks about your perspective on leadership? Anything in particular you'd like to leave us with?
I think that the most important thing is the hardest thing to do. I already mentioned it about reading, about being an information junkie, if you will, and gathering as much information about as many different topics as you can. And that is a real challenge, because if you're sitting in your office reading a book or reading a magazine or reading something that isn't directly related to your organization, your staff, your board members are going to say, he's sloughing off. He's not getting the job done. When really what you're doing is you're stoking the fire for the next wave of growth, the next great opportunity or the next great idea to take this, massage it, mold it, adapt it, and then put it into your organization so that it can grow. People do not let leaders gather that information so that they can lead effectively. And I think that's the greatest challenge that most of us have.
That's a great observation. Okay. I think that is pretty much where I was going with that. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think that,
That's good. That's excellent. Kevin?
Hey, yeah, would you mind asking, would it be okay for you to sort of give your history a little bit? Just a little bit of your CV, so that we have a sense of your past and your background?
kind of like I started out as a child and
Yeah, and after a rough upbringing, coal miner, I became a business executive, yeah. Something like that, if that's, is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. I've heard it before. It's kind of interesting, depending on how much depth you go into.
well, I won't go into that kind of depth, so it won't be that interesting.
Okay, but I'll say,
Yeah, but yeah, I began my career actually selling life insurance, where I found out that I was really bad at it. But I really enjoyed studying the things that you needed to know to be a good life insurance salesman. I learned all about tax law and estate planning and the like. And so I wound up going to the American Cancer Society in Michigan, the state office, at a time when they were just starting to develop a planned giving program for American Cancer Society, the national program. And so I worked with the folks then in New York to help develop the planned giving program for American Cancer Society, and then ran it in the state of Michigan and about 13 other states in the Midwest area. And through that, I got just absolutely fascinated, and I decided that I really wanted to study law. I decided that because people would say to me, "So Ron, how do you know all this stuff? Are you a lawyer?" And I'd have to say no. And I said, wouldn't it be great if I could say yes? So I went to law school, and after I got done with law school, then the position at Michigan State University, the executive director's position, opened up. And I was there for a little over 10 years. Did a lot of different things there, recognizing that, in my view, the job was to raise funds to make sure that the university could educate children at the highest level. My job was to raise funds. But I said, philanthropy is one way to do that. But there's lots of ways to create wealth that can go into supporting the university. So because it was a major research university, it became a lot of fun. So we were funding things that could create patents so that we could license patents and bring in revenues through patent royalties. Then I decided, to let you develop that patent into a product, I'm only getting like 6%. What if I develop that patent into a product and take the whole shooting match? So in the process, we wound up forming 12 different for-profit companies, using patents developed out of the university to create those companies. And part of that was we put together a competitive funding process so that faculty who had great ideas but couldn't find funding could chase their ideas so long as it had the potential of developing a patent, and if it did, then I would own it, or the foundation would own it. And so we used that, and we wound up taking an organization that had about $850,000 in endowment, and by the end of the 10 years, we were at $100 million of endowment, and we're generating something like 300 times the amount of money annually that we were the 10 years before when I started. So that was that. And then I got recruited to a consulting firm out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I became the managing consultant and what we called the senior strategist, working all with not-for-profit organizations. And I did that for about 20 years and decided that travel was awfully hard. It was getting harder as I got older. And it was time for me to do something else. And I decided that I'd been helping so many organizations for 20 years be better. That what if I just focused on one organization and tried to make it better from the front lines? And that's when I took the position with Habitat for Humanity and took over the Henderson County Division.
And you've been there how long?
I've been there 7 years now.
7 years.
When I started, we were building 8 houses a year. And they had been building 8 houses a year for several years before that. With this fiscal year that just ended June the 30th, We closed on 19 new homes, and we have done 20 home repairs as well. We didn't have a home repair program before. So we've expanded the scope of the program fairly dramatically.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Well, thank you. Appreciate you doing this.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
And, next up, I'll return the favor and I'll head your way this afternoon.
Okay, yeah.
And attend the board meeting.
All right, that sounds like a winner. It's good.
Thank you, Kevin.
That was spectacular. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Just so well done.
Thank you.
I've actually interviewed in my previous career a large number of CEOs, and the ability to just be on point at an instant is really a gift.